She was 25 years old when she first put on her uniform. She was 26 when the other guards started calling her the Beast. She was 32 years old when they put a rope around her neck. Her name was Dorothea Binz, and she wasn't some shadowy figure hidden behind bureaucracy. She walked the same ground as her victims, every single day. She laughed while they screamed. She smiled while they begged. She was arguably the most feared guard at Ravensbruck concentration camp, where over 50,000 women and children would perish. But here's the question that historians still wrestle with. The question that might disturb you more than any act of cruelty she committed. Was Dorothea Binz a monster, or was she made into one? Today, we're going inside the life of the youngest female guard executed for war crimes after World War II. Her rise, her crimes, her trial, and the final moments of her life on a cold May morning in 1947. This is a story history rarely tells in full, and it starts long before the war. Dorothea Binz was born on March 16, 1920, in a small village called Dusterlake, a quiet, unremarkable place in northern Germany. She was the daughter of a domestic servant. There was no wealth. There was no privilege. There was, by most accounts, very little at all. She left school at 14. No extraordinary education. No radical political awakening. She wasn't raised in hatred. She wasn't groomed for violence. What she was ordinary. Heartbreakingly, terrifyingly ordinary. In 1939, at 19 years old, Dorothea Binz applied for a position as an Officerin, a female guard, at Ravensbruck concentration camp, which had just opened that same year in northern Germany. It was the only major concentration camp built specifically for women. Why did she apply? The most honest answer is, we don't entirely know. The pay was better than domestic service. The uniform meant status. And in Nazi Germany in 1939, working for the SS was not just acceptable, it was celebrated. She was assigned as a low-ranking guard. She was 19, and she was about to learn, very quickly, what kind of place Ravensbruck truly was. But nothing in her background, explains what she would become. Because by the time she was 25, Dorothea Binz had been promoted to Oberofficerin, Deputy Chief Guard, the second highest-ranking female position in the entire camp. And she had earned that promotion in the most horrifying way imaginable. Ravensbruck. The name means Raven's Bridge in German, a dark, poetic name for a place of unimaginable suffering. Located about 50 miles north of Berlin, Ravensbruck was built on the edge of a lake, surrounded by pine forests. In photographs, it almost looks peaceful. It was anything but. Between 1939 and 1945, more than 130,000 women and children were sent here. Political prisoners, Jewish women, Roma women, Soviet POWs, resistance fighters, women accused of asocial behavior, which in Nazi Germany could mean almost anything. They came from over 30 countries. The conditions were deliberately designed to dehumanize. Starvation rations, forced labor in freezing temperatures, beatings that were not only permitted, they were encouraged. The guards were given near-total power over the lives of the women in their charge. And for a young woman like Dorothea Binz, who had grown up with very little power at all, that authority was intoxicating. Survivor testimony after the war described Binz as almost gleeful in her cruelty. She would administer beatings personally, sometimes for no infraction at all. She was known to set her dog on prisoners for sport. She was observed laughing while women were flogged. One survivor, Carmen Mori, described watching Binz select women for the gas chambers with a smile on her face, as if she were choosing flowers. But it gets more complicated, because Dorothea Binz also had a love life inside Ravensbruck. She fell deeply in love with Edmund Brzozowski, an SS officer stationed at the camp. Their relationship was passionate, even tender, by all accounts. And yet, the same woman who reportedly loved this man with genuine feeling, walked back into the camp yard and inflicted unthinkable suffering without hesitation. This duality, this capacity to love and to destroy, is one of the most unsettling aspects of her story. Let me be clear about something before we go further. What you're about to hear is not conjecture. It is not rumor. It is testimony from survivors who stood in a courtroom and described, in methodical detail, what Dorothea Binz did to them and to the women they watched suffer and die. These are their voices, not lost to history. Binz was directly involved in the administration of corporal punishment, which at Ravensbruck meant floggings of up to 75 lashes, administered on a specially constructed wooden punishment horse. Women were brought to this apparatus for the most minor infractions: a stolen crust of bread, walking too slowly, speaking out of turn. Binz did not merely supervise these punishments. She participated actively, enthusiastically. She was also present at, and according to some testimony, instrumental in, selections for the gas chamber, which began operating at Ravensbruck in late 1944 as the Nazi regime accelerated its extermination program. Thousands of women deemed too sick, too old, or too weak to work were sent directly to their deaths. But perhaps what disturbs historians most is not just the scale of her actions, it's the personal nature of them. Binz was not ordering faceless numbers. She knew the women in her block. She saw their faces every morning at roll call, and she still chose, again and again, to inflict suffering on them. There are also accounts of what was called the Ravensbruck medical experiments, a program run by SS doctors in which prisoners were subjected to horrific surgical procedures without anesthesia, infection studies, and bone-breaking operations, all in the name of Nazi medicine. The women who survived these experiments were known as the rabbits, because they had been treated like laboratory animals. Binz was not a doctor. She was not the architect of these experiments, but she guarded the women who underwent them. She witnessed their suffering, and she did nothing. Perhaps most chillingly of all, by all accounts, she slept well at night. By early 1945, the war was ending. Everyone at Ravensbruck knew it. The Soviet Red Army was advancing from the east. The SS began destroying evidence, burning records, dismantling gas chambers, executing witnesses. In April 1945, with liberation only days away, thousands of inmates were forced on death marches into the surrounding forests. Ravensbruck was liberated by Soviet forces on April 30, 1945, the same day Adolf Hitler died in his Berlin bunker. Dorothea Binz did not flee. Or rather, she tried to, but didn't get far. She was arrested by British forces in May 1945. She was 25 years old. The woman who had wielded absolute power over thousands of prisoners was now herself a prisoner, sitting across a table from Allied investigators. What did she say? She admitted to some of the beatings. She claimed they were within regulations. She denied the worst of the allegations. She presented herself as a junior official following orders, a small cog in a very large machine. It was a defense that would be heard many times in the courtrooms of post-war Europe. It would not save her. The Ravensbruck trials were held in Hamburg, Germany, between 1946 and 1948, under British military jurisdiction. They were not as famous as the Nuremberg trials, but for the women who had survived Ravensbruck, they were just as important. 16 members of the camp staff were tried in the first trial, which concluded in December 1946. Dorothea Binz was among the accused. The courtroom heard testimony from survivors across Europe: Polish women, French women, Belgian women, Jewish women, women who had had their bones broken for science, women who had watched their friends die on a flogging bench. They described Dorothea Binz in specific, unflinching terms. They remembered her face, her voice, the sound of her boots on the gravel, the way she laughed. Binz sat through it all with what observers described as remarkable composure. She did not weep. She did not break down. She occasionally shook her head. Her defense argued that she was young, that she was following orders, that she was a product of a system designed to produce exactly what she had become. The prosecution argued that personal cruelty, active, enthusiastic, willful cruelty, went far beyond any order she had ever been given. The tribunal agreed with the prosecution. Dorothea Binz was found guilty of war crimes. She was sentenced to death. On the morning of May 2, 1947, Dorothea Binz was taken from her cell at Hamelin prison in Germany. She was 32 years old. Alongside her that morning were 10 other convicted war criminals from Ravensbruck and other camps. Among them, Vera Salvquart, a nurse convicted of murdering prisoners with poison, and several male SS officers. By most accounts, Dorothea Binz faced her execution with calm. Some witnesses said she walked to the gallows without hesitation. One account suggests she made a brief statement, though its exact words have been disputed by historians. What is not disputed is what happened next. The sentence was carried out. Dorothea Binz, who had overseen beatings and selections and cruelty beyond easy description, was hanged by the neck until dead. She became the youngest female guard to be executed for war crimes in the aftermath of World War II. The graves of the executed were not marked. The women of Ravensbruck had no graves either, for a long time. The camp was used as a Soviet military base for decades. It was only after the reunification of Germany that a proper memorial was established on the site. Today, the names of the victims are inscribed there. Tens of thousands of names. Dorothea Binz's name is not among them. So what do we do with a story like this? Dorothea Binz was not born evil. There is no evidence she was sadistic as a child or that she was hardwired for cruelty. She was a 19-year-old from a poor village who was handed a uniform and a position of power, and she chose, every day, to use that power to destroy. The philosopher Hannah Arendt, writing about the trials of Nazi war criminals, coined a phrase that has echoed through history ever since: the banality of evil. The idea that history's most monstrous acts are not always committed by monsters, but by ordinary people who made extraordinary choices to do harm. Dorothea Binz is a case study in that banality. She is also a reminder of something the survivors of Ravensbruck spent their lives trying to tell the world: that history is not something that happens to other people, that systems of cruelty require ordinary people to run them, and that the most important question, perhaps the only question that really matters, is not what monsters do. It is what ordinary people choose.